The groundskeeper touched my sleeve as I turned away from my mother's grave. His voice was barely above a whisper. "There is something you need to know before you leave." I tried to pull away. My wife was waiting by the car. Other mourners were already walking toward the parking lot. I had a reception to get back to. A house full of people who needed food and coffee and someone to hold them together, and that someone was supposed to be me. "Ma'am," he said, "that casket is empty." Everything stopped. The sound of the wind through the cemetery trees, the crunch of gravel under distant footsteps. All of it went quiet at once, like someone had pressed mute on the entire world. I turned and looked at him. He was a man in his early 60s, weathered hands, careful eyes. The kind of face that had spent decades at the edges of other people's worst days. "Say that again?" He reached into his jacket pocket and pressed a key into my hand. Small, brass. Number 11 stamped into the head. "Your mother left instructions. She left this for you 3 months ago. With me, told me to give it to you after the service and only after. She told me to tell you one thing. Do not go home. Go to Compass Storage on Highway 6, Unit 11. Go tonight. Go alone. My name is Nora Callahan. I am 41 years old. I am a forensic accountant. Spend my professional life finding things that other people have hidden. Numbers that do not add up. Transfers that go nowhere. Paper trails that loop back on themselves in ways that are designed to confuse everyone, except someone who knows exactly what they are looking at. I am very good at my job. I was not prepared for this." Mother was Margaret Callahan. She was 63 years old, and she died of a stroke on a Tuesday morning in October, according to every document I had signed in the previous 4 days, according to the hospice records and the death certificate and the funeral home paperwork that I had reviewed with the specific professional attention of someone who reviews documents for a living. According to all of that, my mother had died. According to the groundskeeper at Holy Cross Cemetery on a gray Thursday afternoon, she had not. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. A text from my brother Daniel. "Where are you? Everyone is waiting. Come straight home. We need to talk tonight." I stared at the message. My brother Daniel communicated in long, rambling texts full of run-on sentences and at least 2 spelling errors per message. He had been texting me the same way since he got his first phone at 14 years old. That message was 5 words. Clean, no errors. Not Daniel. Not the Daniel the first had known for 39 years. I looked at the groundskeeper. His name was Thomas, according to the small embroidered patch on his jacket. Thomas was watching my face with the expression of someone who had been waiting a long time to deliver something difficult and was now watching it land. "The text," I said. "Is this connected?" He nodded slowly. "Your mother said if you got a message from someone in the family telling you to come home right away, and something about it felt wrong. She said trust that feeling. She said go to Unit 11 first. She said everything you need to understand is there. She said there is a woman at the storage facility who is expecting you. Her name is Helen. She will help you." I looked at the key in my hand. I looked at my mother's grave. The fresh dirt. The flowers we had chosen together as a family 2 days ago from a laminated binder at the funeral home. Roses and white lilies. Margaret's favorites. "I am going to ask you one question," I said, "and I need you to tell me the truth. Did you see her? Did you actually see my mother in that casket?" Thomas held my gaze without flinching. "I saw what I was told was your mother. But no, I did not see her face. The casket was closed at preparation. I was not present for the viewing, only for the burial. Had been at the viewing. I had stood in that room for 2 hours greeting people and accepting condolences, and I had looked at my mother's face in that casket, and I had said goodbye. I had said goodbye. I walked to my car. I sat behind the wheel for 3 minutes without starting the engine. I am a forensic accountant. Follow evidence. I do not follow feelings or instincts or cryptic messages from cemetery groundskeepers. I follow what I can document and verify. But I am also my mother's daughter, and my mother was the most precise woman I have ever known. She taught me to read a balance sheet before I could ride a bike. She used to say that the numbers never lie, but the people presenting them often do. She had been a financial crimes investigator for the federal government for 22 years. She had retired 4 years ago, and she had spent those 4 years doing what she said she had always wanted to do, which was grow tomatoes and read novels and drive up the coast whenever she felt like it. That was the story. That was what I had believed. I started the car and drove to Highway 6. Compass Storage. It was a long, low complex of metal units behind a chain-link fence with a security camera at every corner. The office at the front had its lights on. A woman was standing outside before I pulled all the way into the lot. She walked to my car as I parked. She was in her mid-50s with short gray hair and the specific posture of someone who had spent years being alert in rooms where most people were not. "Nora Callahan," she said. It was not a question. "I am Helen Marsh. Your mother told me you would come." She was either very sure of you or very sure of herself. I said both. She almost smiled. "Follow me." Unit 11 was at the far end of the second row. Helen stood back while I used the key. The lock turned smoothly. I lifted the door. The unit was not a storage unit. Rather, it was a storage unit that had been converted into something else over what appeared to be a significant period of time. A folding table with 2 laptops, a filing cabinet, a cot with a folded blanket, a wall covered in photographs and documents and printed emails connected with red thread, and sitting in a camp chair in the back corner of the unit reading a paperback novel was my mother, Margaret Callahan, 63 years old. Alive. She looked up from her book. She set it down carefully with her bookmark in place because my mother was constitutionally incapable of folding a page corner. She stood up. "Nora, Mom, I said it the way you say a word when you are not sure if language is still working." And she crossed the unit and put her arms around me, and I stood there in the entrance of a storage unit on Highway 6 with my arms at my sides for approximately 4 seconds before something broke open in my chest, and I held on. We stood like that for a while. Then I stepped back and I looked at her face. Her real face, not the face in the casket. Hers. "I have questions." "I know," she said it with the particular calm of someone who has been preparing for a conversation. "For a long time? Sit down, Helen. We'll get us coffee." "There is a lot to tell you." The story took the better part of 3 hours. In 1999, my mother was 38 years old. She was 3 years into an undercover investigation of a man named Conrad Voss. Voss was a financial architect. It was the term her supervisor had used when he briefed her on the case. He was not a criminal in the conventional sense. He did not move drugs or traffic people or run operations that involved physical danger in any visible way. What Conrad Voss did was build the financial infrastructure that made other people's criminal operations invisible. Shell companies nested inside legitimate businesses. Wire transfers routed through 7 countries before landing in an account that looked entirely clean. Investment vehicles that turned money the color of coal into money the color of sunlight. He was brilliant at it. My mother had spent 2 years building a case against him. She had worn a wire to 41 meetings. She had documented 118 transactions. She had built something that the federal prosecutor called the cleanest financial crimes case she had seen in 20 years on the job. Conrad Voss was convicted in 2001. He was sentenced to 27 years, began serving that sentence in a federal facility in Pennsylvania. My mother was supposed to go into witness protection. She had been told from the beginning of the operation that if she testified, Voss would come after her eventually. He was patient the way dangerous men who understand long games are patient. He would wait, he would plan, he would collect the debt. My mother had declined witness protection. She was 40 years old. She had 2 children. She had a life she was not willing to abandon for a new name in a new city with a new history built. From nothing, the government let her make that choice. They gave her a new identity layer, a modified service record. Her backstory is a financial investigator for a state agency rather than federal. Not perfect, but sufficient for a man who was going to be in prison for the foreseeable future. The foreseeable future lasted until 14 weeks ago. Conrad Voss was released on compassionate grounds. Terminal cancer diagnosis. His attorneys argued that a dying man posed no threat. The court agreed. My mother found out through a contact. She had maintained quietly for 22 years. Retired federal marshal named Arthur, who sent her a single text the morning Voss walked out of the facility. "It is time, Margaret." She had 3 days to plan. She had chosen Thomas the groundskeeper because Thomas had worked at Holy Cross for 30 years and had a particular moral clarity about what mattered and what did not. She had contacted Helen, who had been her handler during the Voss operation, and who had never entirely stopped watching the situation. She had arranged a hospice admission under a secondary identity she had maintained for emergencies. She had found a body through a medical institution contact. Same height, same build. The viewing had been closed casket except for a brief period. At the beginning, when family was brought in alone, what they saw had been carefully prepared. The lighting was low. My mother had managed this detail herself. She was, after all, a woman who understood that people see what they are prepared to see. The deception had been complete. I had stood in that room. I had said goodbye. I thought about that. Thought about standing at the edge of that casket and talking to whatever was in it and the things I had said. The private things you say to someone when you believe you will not have another opportunity. I am angry, I said. She nodded. You have every right to be. You made me think you were dead. I know. For 3 days, I thought you were dead. I know, Nora. I'm sorry. You let me grieve you. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said something I was not expecting. I let you grieve me because I needed Conrad Voss to believe you were grieving me. I needed him to see a real funeral attended by people who genuinely believed their mother was dead. Because if any single person in that cemetery had known the truth, and Voss had anyone watching, she did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. I understood. I had been weaponized. As cover. My grief had been a prop and a plan designed to keep my mother alive. I sat with that for a long time. Helen had brought coffee in paper cups, and I held mine without drinking it, and looked at the wall of photographs and documents my mother had assembled in this unit over what appeared to be weeks of preparation. Where is he now? I said. Voss. Helen answered. He is in the city. He has been here for 11 days. He found Margaret's address 6 days ago. He has been watching the house. She paused. He attended the funeral. I looked at her. He was there at the graveside, 3rd row, standing. In the back? He wore a hat and kept his distance, but our surveillance picked him up. He watched the whole service. My mother said he needed to believe it, needed to see the burial, needed to feel it was real before he accepted it and moved on. Did it work? Helen and my mother exchanged a look. We believe so. He left the cemetery before it ended. Our team tracked him to the airport. He was booked on a flight to Lisbon. He is scheduled to depart in 9 hours. My mother looked at me. If he gets on that plane, this is over. He goes to Europe to die from his cancer and whatever comfort he has arranged for himself. The threat ends. 9 hours, I said. What happens if he does not get on the plane? Lynn said. That is the variable we are managing. There is a possibility that someone in your family received a message today asking you to come home. If you went home, if people gathered, if Conrad Voss received word that something had changed, he might reconsider his departure. I thought about Daniel's text. Come straight home. We need to talk tonight. I pulled out my phone and showed it to Helen. She looked at it and looked at my mother. Margaret's face tightened. That is not Daniel. She said it with certainty. Daniel has never sent me a text that short in his entire life. Voss has someone watching your family. Someone who has access to Daniel's phone or has cloned it. He is trying to bring you home. Trying to see if the grief is real or performed. Because if you are behaving strangely, if you are not where you are supposed to be, he will know something is wrong. So what do? You go home, my mother said. Go to the reception. You behave exactly as you would behave if everything you believed this morning were still true. You let people comfort you. You eat something. You thank people for coming. Cry if you need to cry because you have real things to cry about, right? Now and that will not require performance from you. You stay for 2 hours and then you say you are exhausted and you go to bed. And in 9 hours, Conrad Voss gets on a plane to Lisbon. I looked at my mother. I looked at the wall of documents. Behind her, I looked at Helen, who had the particular stillness of someone who had been in rooms like this many times before and understood exactly what they required. And then I looked at my mother again, the woman who had taught me to follow evidence. Had told me my entire life that the numbers never lie, but the people presenting them often do. Who had spent 22 years of her professional life finding things other people had hidden. Who had hidden the most important thing of all. From me for 3 days, and had very good reasons for every part of it. You could have told me, I said. Before, you could have brought me in. She shook her head. If you had known, you would have looked for me. You cannot help it. It is who you are. We would have tried to find me, and Voss would have known. I know, my daughter Nora. I know exactly who you are. I drove back to my mother's house. I walked into a living room full of people holding plates of food and cups of tea, and the specific subdued energy of people who have come together because someone is gone. My brother Daniel was there, real Daniel, with his rumpled shirt and his genuine red eyes, and the particular helpless look he always got when he did not know what to do with his hands. He hugged me for a long time. I let him. My aunt pressed a plate into my hands. My mother's oldest friend, Ellen, held my face in both of her palms and said, Margaret was so proud of you. I said, I know. Said it without my voice breaking, which was the hardest thing I had done in 3 days. I stayed for 2 hours and 17 minutes. Then I said I was exhausted. I went upstairs. I sat on the edge of my childhood bed in the room my mother had kept exactly as it was when I left for college, and I waited. Helen texted at 11:42. He boarded. The plane is on the runway. I sat there in the dark of my childhood room, and I breathed for the first time since a groundskeeper had touched my sleeve in a cemetery and told me a casket was empty. Conrad Voss landed in Lisbon 31 hours later, died in a private clinic in Portugal 6 weeks after that. His cancer had been more advanced than the compassionate release documents indicated. He did not contact anyone in the weeks between his departure and his death. Whatever revenge he had imagined had apparently been satisfied by what he witnessed in that cemetery on a gray Thursday afternoon. My mother emerged from the storage unit on a Friday morning. She drove herself home in a car that Helen had kept. In a secure lot, she walked in through her own back door and called me on my cell phone. I am home, she said. I said, I know. I was parked across the street. She came to the front window and looked out and saw my car and raised one hand. I got out and walked across, and she opened the door before I reached it. I have spent a year trying to decide how I feel about what she did. The deception. The 3 days of real grief. Standing at a casket and saying goodbye to a woman who was sitting in a storage unit on Highway 6 reading a paperback novel with her bookmark carefully in place. What I have arrived at is this. My mother spent 22 years protecting other people. She spent 3 days protecting me. She did it the only way she knew how, which was completely and without half measures and with the specific professional precision of a woman who understood that the difference between a plan that works and one that does not is usually one detail that someone decided not to bother with. I am a forensic accountant. I understand precision. I understand the cost of the detail you decide to skip. My mother did not skip any details, and I am here. She is here. Conrad Voss is in a cemetery in Lisbon, and we are not. That is the accounting. That is the final balance. My mother grows tomatoes. She reads novels. She drives up the coast whenever she feels like it. On Sunday mornings, she calls me, and we talk for an hour about nothing important. Last week, she told me that Thomas, the groundskeeper, had sent her a card when she came back. He had written one line inside, glad the numbers added up. My mother had taped it to the refrigerator. She said it was the best review of her career. I believe her. Tell me what you would have done if you had found out the person in that casket was not who you thought. I read every single one. Like this video if you believe that sometimes the people who love us most do the most incomprehensible things too. Keep us safe. And subscribe, because next week I have a story that is going to hit just as hard as this one. I will see you there.